All right, I want to call this meeting of the Regional Transit Board to order. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have a few people out ill tonight and some who are here and ill, but we're going to go through it anyway. Cindy?
Director Budge? Here. Director Hansen?
Here.
Director Harris is marked as being absent. Director Hume will be a little late. Director Jennings? Director Morin?
Here.
Director Miller is marked as being absent. Director Natoli?
Here.
Director Cerna?
Here.
Chair Chenier?
Semi here.
Semi here. With that, we have a quorum at 91 votes.
Great. Thanks.
This-
Go ahead.
This meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel, and will be streamed live on RT's website. Tonight's meeting will air on Wednesday, January the 11th at 6 p.m. and replayed on Thursday, January 12th at noon on Channel 14 and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. It is also closed caption. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker card located at the rear of the room and provide it to me or Adam. Please speak into the microphone and state your name for the record. We would appreciate everyone turning off their cell phones. Thank you.
Okay, great. Deborah, do you want to lead us in the pledge tonight, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great job. Thank you. All right, we have three members of the public who wish to speak on matters not on the agenda. Jeff Tom, and Mike Barnbaum, and Jeff Tartagia. Just hang on, you're in your backpack there too. There you go.
The podium's right in front of you, and the microphone is directly in front of you. On your
Mr. Chair and members, for the record, my name is Jeff Tom, and I am here as chair of your Mobility Advisory Council, or MAC for short. As 2017 begins, I wanted to come here tonight on behalf of the council to introduce myself and to express our renewed vigor to work with you in the year to come. We appreciate your board's and General Manager Lee's customer-centric focus. We also appreciate the great working relationships that we have with staff, from Mr. Lee right on down to our direct relationship with Janice Labrato and your accessible services staff. We are, as you know, your resource for obtaining the perspective of the disability and senior community. We embrace that responsibility and value that role. We hope that you will call upon us at every opportunity to provide you that perspective, and we will certainly give it to you whenever needed. We know that you can better make those difficult decisions on the issues which you face by having the perspective of our communities, which are, of course, unique as they are so transit dependent. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, and I hope that we will continue to have an outstanding relationship with this board and your staff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We'll look forward to working with you.
I'm on your right.
All right, Mike, you're up. Go ahead.
Good evening, Chair Chenier, members of the board, Mike Barnbaum of Ride Downtown 916. Several times since the last board meeting, I've been approached at the Golden One Center and in the community asking if I or anyone in our organization has any New Year's resolutions. And normally the answer would be no, but in this case the answer is an emphatic yes. In wake of the news of Measure B in Sacramento County and Measure M in Placer County, we do have some New Year's resolutions. Over the course between now and next December, we want to make a significant impact on transportation funding and legislation pertaining to transportation funding. To that end, we are going to take our cause and efforts to inside the building of the Capitol in Sacramento. We're going to work closely with and have identified 2 members, Jim Frazier, Assembly Bill 1, and Jim Bell, Senate Bill 1. We're going to work with those bills and make sure, in working with those gentlemen, that of the larger bill, that there is a trailer bill added that would be flexible to jurisdictions like Sacramento County and Placer County and others across the state, that would present local measures to their voters that would only require a 55% approval rating or higher to pass, whereas we saw how difficult it was getting 67%. We want to hope that the operation and capital funding could be utilized particularly in Sacramento to completely turn the Sacramento Regional Transit District bus network upside down. To that end, we want to work with the Regional Transit District now that we are very safe in seeing operation of the Golden One Center service being very smooth. We'll continue to monitor that, but we want to work with the district to turn the bus network upside down through the route optimization study. We feel that the district needs to take full advantage of the road network and provide as many direct routes as possible and can be obtained starting by January 2019. And that's why we hope, working with your board, we hope to get a lot of things approved through the study and changed by the start of January of 2019, and hope all these goals are met by next December.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, just really quick in conclusion, we'll present over the course of the next several board meetings some ideas of what the route network ideal would look like.
Great.
Thank you.
Jeffrey?
Well, I'm going to say to this board, Jeff Tartakia, that look at what a month has done. December, you were on a good high. This last month, you got riders upset with you immensely because, gee, you've posted most electronic that says, we have a problem with the section of Iron Point and Folsom. They're not happy about that. I'm glad today the sign changed. But I can know from December 13th until now, that took the bulk of the electronic and light rail signage. Now, you apparently like to use AT&T for any of the little devices. This is the phone that the PUC issues on these free phones. This is where the text programming needs to work at RT so that you know when's the next bus coming. It's that small, so it needs to be that small to be utilized. If somebody needs a phone to test it and experiment with it, I have no problems with leaving a phone like this with them. But those are 2 of the problems. This last week, you really messed up because from Thursday, where the electronic bulletin boards didn't tell you what was going on at Coloma, to the weekend where the 30 was down and the Gold Line was down and other issues through there, and there was nobody there at Sacramento Valley, and I presume Sunday there was no way of contacting to let it know about any of the problems with the storm going on. And you're going to have more storms coming clearly in the future. It's something in the way of service that you need to figure out if you're going to be getting ridership back. The other thing that's also going on, and I've seen it for myself, and I've told Roger about 4 new problems with the Connect card. The other thing is you have, and this is more for the county, is you have several immigrant populations that are coming in through the Arcade area, Susan Peterson's district, and I've watched and see how, once again, they don't know how to use the system, and getting somebody to guide them and use the system presents that most of the time the riders are saying, just go ahead. So they're not being tracked, and they're not being tracked for revenue. The new fare machines that you've pretty well gotten in, you have still problems, and when the money gets wet, the machines don't function well. They don't like the dollars. They don't like them, period, well. You can't do a 50-cent piece, as well as some other problems with the new fare machines. The other thing is, for both that, the radio app, and the Connect card, there's not a consistency between drivers of how you utilize it. And you're going to pretty soon hear about workman's comp, because turning their neck around because they don't know what are the signals to tell them whether it's working, whether it's correctly, or whether it's failing on the Connect card, and they have to keep turning over to the left side, right side, to see whether that Connect card is a functioning entity. Those are a few. I could spend another 5 minutes about all the other problems, but right now I'm deciding whether for the next 18 months we're working for a new program, or whether it's time for me to leave Sacramento. I'd love to see better, but I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it at all.
Thanks. All right, we're going to move on to our consent calendar. To members of the public who wish to speak on that. Maggie Coulter on item number 1, and Jeffrey Tartagia on item number 3. I'm sorry, what do you want to speak on? 11 and 12. Okay, Jeffrey?
Once again, we'll say, in hindsight, when you added onto the 23 the 7 o'clock timetable, I made the suggestion that at the bottom of the printed timesheets should be what the bus stop numbers are. What on the written schedules that you've awarded out there, again, I will rephrase and say that I believe that would be more helpful for the paper schedules, that at the bottom of your schedule should be your bus stop numbers for your timed outlets, because that will encourage more people to know what time, and when they try using a text ability, what time is the bus likely going to be there in real time. And supposedly real time is coming up, but you need the bus stop numbers, and you still don't have them all posted, as well as you still don't have at 17th and L the correct shall we say, fares listed on the schedule. There's a bunch of other ones, but please, I think it needs a greater effort. In the meantime, lastly, I will say, I lost all contact, so if anybody want to get a hold of me, they need to call me so I add their contact back in. Sorry about that.
All right, thanks very much. So we have the consent calendar. Any comments on the consent calendar? Mr. Natoli?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to have a little discussion around item number 5, please.
I'll move 1 through 4 and 6, 7, 8, 9.
All right.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion by Mr. Moore and a second by Mr. Hanson. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Mr. Natoli, you want to address your concerns?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just,
May I read it first, Director Nuttall?
Sure, go ahead.
You want to announce the item?
Sure. Item number 5, resolution approving the Second Amendment to the contract for banking services with U.S. National Bank Association, and Brent Berniker's here to answer your question.
Okay. Thank you for reading that, Madam Clerk. Brent, I guess my question goes, and the item is I think pretty clearly stated, but I guess what is driving the need for this electronic payroll card? I understand some folks may not want to have or may not have it and want to, or don't have a relationship with a bank, but it sounds like RT, as the employer, is going to bear the cost of the use of that card for ever how many transactions the employee who would receive it. And again, you give us a pretty wide open range that you're going to have a limit of up to $100,000 transactional costs borne by the district on behalf of the employees who are issued these, if I understand it correctly, but with really no understanding about, because it doesn't give us any number, how many employees think are going to take advantage of this. It's descriptive, but for my purposes, I think we're taking on something, I don't know, maybe a lot of employers are doing this now, and they bear the cost of it, but could you spend
Sure,
a
yeah, let
moment-
me give you a little
good.
bit of background.
Yeah.
So I think it's been about 5 years now where employers have looked for different ways to give employees their checks, whether it's via a check, direct deposit, or these employee cards. And actually, just to give you a little bit of background on the fiscal impact, we say actually RT will not incur any fees with this payroll system. So this is actually going to be put on the burden of the person that actually gets these cards. So I think your first concern, which is valid, is this going to be, is that where?
Yeah,
Is that what you're looking-
maybe I read it wrong then. So who incurs the $100,000 of payroll card service?
That's for the person that actually receives the card. When you get your pay information or your payroll information on your card, and you go out and use that card, it's similar to like an ATM card at these ATMs.
Okay, so
if they're using,
the employee bears the cost.
correct, yes. So I think your concern that you
Okay.
had was this an RT?
I misread it then.
No problem.
I apologize for that.
That's okay. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's just in certain situations does the employee incur the cost. The reason why we put these dollar amounts in these issue papers is anytime we get into a contract, we still have to spell it out. So,
My question's been answered.
okay,
Yeah,
great. All
Thanks.
right, thank you.
So I have a question. So, okay, however, can that be deposited into a bank account for people who have bank accounts?
Sure, it would be, it's just like their check, right? So they can take that card and they can probably go to their bank account and ask that money to be transferred over. How they do that, through a wire or through an ACH or something, that would be up to the bank.
I mean, it just kind of, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with this sort of a system, but it just seems to me that giving it out on a debit card is almost like assuming nobody has a bank account.
This actually is, we do have some employees that don't have bank accounts, and this is a way to
Well,
get,
sure,
right.
but not everybody.
Right. The amount of people that will probably sign up for this card is probably small at this point.
So
But
it's
we'll-
optional.
It is. It's not a
Oh,
requirement.
I'm sorry, I did not get that feeling.
Sorry. Okay, that's another thing.
All right.
That is something
It's
we
all right.
can't push. We're just trying to push different ways to reduce the amount of check stock that we issue at RT, and this is just a new way of doing
All
it.
right,
Move on.
all right.
Okay.
I have a motion by Mr. Natoli, a second by Mr. Jennings. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, the motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Pete. All right,
Item number 10, the general manager's report.
Good evening, Chair Chenier, members of the board, MAC Chair Jeff, Thung, and some today I saw lots of RT ambassadors here too, and the public. Happy New Year. First, I would like to briefly update what is going on in the Capitol Hill, specifically the 115th Congress and the Trump administration's some initiatives. For the 115th Congress, Republicans intend to advance a series of budget reconciliation bills that will address some comprehensive tax reforms, repeal much of the Affordable Care Act, and seek to rescind many of the previous administration's executive orders and other rules. However, budget reconciliations require only a simple majority to be adopted, but must be focused on mandatory spending and propose instructions to authorizing committees to adopt program changes that would achieve budget savings. So it will be critical to understand what changes are included in the bills and how they may or may not affect surface transportation programs, which we get the funding from. In the meantime, expect that the hearing of the nomination of Elaine Chao as the Department of Transportation Secretary will be conducted in Congress soon. History would suggest that her nomination will be confirmed by the inauguration day on January 20th. In response to questions submitted to her to her by the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, she identified 3 priorities. First, effective enforcement of safety measures. Second, expedite the process for making repairs and building new constructions and eliminating or decreasing regulatory burdens. And third, strive for equity between urban and rural areas among different modes of transportation and other equally deserving stakeholders. Secondly, I'm pleased to report that RT's ridership was strong on New Year's Eve day, which was a free ride day to downtown events. There was a Kings game under the sky, spectacular fireworks celebration. We counted nearly 3,600 riders for those 2 events, the additional rides. During the holiday season, there was a significant positive media coverage in print and broadcast news when talking about alternative transportation options and encourage people to take light rail on New Year's Eve. From the screen, you can see an article in Sacramento magazine in January edition with a significant turnaround from 9 months ago. RT has finally become part of the changing Sacramento culture, or we are at the front line of the change. In addition, we have been running a smooth operation during the entire holiday season, and thanks to the professional work by our operational team. And we did had 2 accidents, but both are not at RT's fault. Another subject I would like to share is the award of contract to Lamar Transit Advertisement, Inc. in a relentless pursuit to generate more revenues. We are excited to sign contract with Lamar, one of the largest outdoor advertising company in North America. RT has received $1 million in advance, the minimal annual guaranteed revenue for a total of 2 years for light rail vehicle and station advertising, and which will help RT's cash flow. We have not earned that money yet, but we get that cash in advance. In the meantime, based on RT's naming rights policy, we are finalizing a naming right contract with a company called Superlative Group, one of the most experienced, knowledgeable, and successful sponsorship sales firms in the world. Other transit authorities in cities such as San Diego, Dallas, Phoenix, and Minneapolis have partnered with this company. San Diego actually secured a 30 years, $30 million agreement with University of California, San Diego for naming rights of a light rail line. Lastly, a bit of good news. Last month, RT won the award of SACOG Salutes as a regional collaborator because of the excellent contribution and collaboration RT has made to the Golden Wine Center opening. Receiving this award, we our board member, I think Hansen, board director, Maureen, and there's a lot of board member was there, and Supervisor was there, and some along with RT staff. That concludes my GM report. Thank you. So next is Brendan talking about the financial report.
Good evening, Chair Chenier and members of the board. So let me make sure I got this right. All right. Well, we have actually 2 pieces of good financial information to present. One is the numbers, and I'll go through those in just a minute. But we also have some good news as it relates to our investor rating. At the end of December, we received an update from Standard & Poor's, which rates us, and they affirmed a stable rating for RT. We're an A- rating, and although it's not great news that we didn't get an upgrade, it's actually good news that we remain stable at this point. And the way they look at RT and look at our financial situation and just the global economy, what they said is, you guys have produced some great financial information, but we need to have a full year of information before we can actually start looking to determine if there is an upgrade in the near future. But we're going to continue to work with them as well as Moody's. We actually have a meeting in the next couple weeks to just kind of discuss our financial situations and share all the good news that we have. So at this point in time, I'll just jump ahead to some of the financial numbers. And typically when we look at the financial numbers, I always like to start with how are our revenues doing in total compared to our expenses, and that's on the bottom left-hand side. And you'll see at the very bottom our net operating surplus deficit. In this case, it's a surplus. It's about $700,000, so there's more revenues than expenses by about $700,000 for November. And then year to date, you can look over to the far right, and you'll see the actuals. We're actually ahead by $1.2 million, so that is great at this point in time. And then you kind of look at our structure and say, where do these positive variances come from? Well, the first is in fair revenues. You'll see in November, fair revenues are about $242,000 greater than budget. What occurred there is we have an agreement with Los Rios Community College, and if you recall back in January, we restructured that agreement. It's based on a fall and semester schedule that we received from them. We received more revenues in this fall semester than anticipated, and that's just due to the change in that structure. We charge on a per unit basis as opposed to the past we had a different fee structure. So this is really good. This revenue that we receive from from Los Rios not only helps us from an actual budget to actual standpoint, but it also helps us with our system-wide average fare. If you recall, Los Rios was one of those fare categories where we received the lowest average fare. So bumping that up is really good news. It kind of achieves two goals there. The next thing on the expense side, you'll look over and you'll see salaries, services, and utilities. And if you look over to the far right, you'll see that we're under budget in all three of those categories. And that's really great. What's occurring there is we're having a good capital recovery. This is where we're able to charge to projects. And the other thing is we're able to actually constrict some of our spending. So that's what you're seeing there. As with any good news, there's always some challenges that you're going to be faced with. And we actually have two challenges that we're looking at right now. And one has to do with the expense side. We purchase CNG fuel from under a DGS contract, Department of General Services contract. We get a very low price for that fuel. It's about 33 cents per therm. But what we also have on that contract is we have to pay for transportation fees. We, along with everyone else that purchases CNG. And recently, PG&E passed along a new transportation fee, and it's pretty much doubled the transportation fee. So that we're getting hit with. We don't have any ability to impact or make a change to that fee as well as everybody that purchases this CNG fuel. And that's about a $700,000 additional cost that we were not anticipating. So with this good news, we have to kind of realize that's something we need to start thinking of in the future, how we're going to deal with it. The next challenge that we have is a shortfall in the STA revenues. You'll recall last year, this is our diesel tax revenues. Last year, we had a decrease of about 24% in diesel tax revenues. This year, we're seeing the same trend happen. The nice thing is we've been able to work with SACOG staff. They initially projected that the balance was going to be at a $1.4 million hit to our STA revenues, but they were able to work through it and find some unappropriated fund balances, kind of like a rainy day reserve to help offset it for a one-time situation. So they were able to offset that by about $700,000. So we're probably going to see a shortfall in the February timeframe when they bring it to their board, that there's another $770,000 shortfall in the STA revenues. So the other thing, though, from something that's been happening on the good side of the house is we've actually seen our sales tax in the region actually improve. And so what we're going to be doing to kind of deal with some of these shortfalls in STA revenues is we'll be working with SACOG in the county, and we've done this in the past, to look at the apportionment schedule to see if that's something that we can bring back because of this positive trend. I think the budget was around 3% growth, and we're seeing around 5.1% growth. So if we can get a new apportionment schedule, that should kind of help with some of this shortfall in STA revenues. With that, we're also working with SACOG to see if there's any 5307 money available to kind of help offset some of these costs. And this information will be brought forward soon. Like I said, February is the date that this is brought forward to the SACOG board. So next, I'm going to just dive into some of the slides that we show each month. And this is our fair revenue comparison. On the far left, you'll see that fair revenues exceeded budget by about 9%. That's the column on the left. And then right next to it, you can see that fair revenues this year compared to last year are up about 28%. So again, everything's going really well with our fair revenues. And then the next comparison that we look at is our fare box recovery revenue. And if you look at this, the November data, because of that Los Rios agreement, we're able to see that fair revenue, our fair recovery revenue is about 24.2%, and that's actually higher than our TDA requirement of 23%. So this is great. We haven't seen this in a while where we've been able to exceed that target. Year to date, what we're looking at is about 21.1%, and we're ahead of our budget at this point in time from a year to date fair recovery ratio. And then the last slide that we cover is the ridership. Ridership is one of those areas where when you do a fare increase, we need to expect some level of a decrease in ridership. So as anticipated, we can actually see that ridership has been going down. In November, when you look at November ridership compared to both 2015 and the forecasted budget, it's down. For the month, we're about 5% lower than forecast. And then if you look at year to date, it's about a 3% difference. It's nice to see that it's still within reach. If you look at these numbers, we're talking about 200,000 to 300,000 rides is what we're looking at. So this is something that we're going to continue to focus on and try to improve. But at this point in time, understanding that there was a fare increase and we're doing increased inspection, what we are getting is more paid riders. And I think that's really important for us as well as our financial picture to show that we're actually collecting good fare revenue. That concludes my presentation. If there's any questions, I'm available.
All right, Ms. Budge?
So, unfortunately, it sounds like if it were not for all the people riding to the Kings games, the number would be really miserable, the ridership number.
It's what's interesting about the ridership is where we're seeing a bigger decrease is on the bus side than the rail. So it's difficult to say that it's the Kings riders that are causing a decrease in ridership.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that.
If there were not,
it would even be
for the
worse.
Kings
Yes.
riders, the numbers would be really dreadful.
That is a good point because you can see that
The trains are full.
Yeah. So I think all the efforts that we've been doing so forth with the Golden One Center has been positive from a ridership standpoint. I mean, I know James has presented a lot of information on the ridership, but it's definitely something that we've benefited from. And I think that, our rating agencies, we've been talking to them about how these are new a lot of these are new riders that we're seeing. We're seeing them using our fare equipment and they're excited. We're out there talking to them about their experience, and typically it's the word of mouth that kind of encourages those people from riding.
I will agree, though, that at least on the goal line, there's some attrition from the total enthusiasm at the beginning to today. So I can't think of any. I'm getting the funny alert apps, the funny alerts on the phone, the cartoons that you showed us last time. Those came in. But if we have any plans for a kind of renewing advertising to game ridership or people attending events at the arena,
Yes,
that might be a good idea.
Actually, we just had a couple meetings with our marketing consulting firm, Threefold, to start to launch a series of actions or try to get more ridership. However, I would like to point out this: the new ridership we have gained from the Golden One Center service maybe just like about within 1% of the total ridership. So even though it's great to gain additional ridership from the Kings games, but that compared to the total ridership is really a very, very small portion. Like I said, it's about 1% or something like that.
Okay, and I hadn't heard it expressed that way. What I heard was that while 7% of arena attendees were expected to ride the train, that number is actually up to 10%.
Yes, but that is, if you think about 10%, it would be 1,500.
Yeah, that's
ridership.
only 1,700 people.
Yeah, 1,700 people, yes. And daily on a weekday, our ridership system-wide is 100,000 versus that 1,700 additional ridership we gain from the Golden One service.
Okay.
But not every day you have the Golden One service. So if you spread out the whole year, about 1% of the whole.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Brent. Is that it? All right. Mr. Hanson, and then we have one, well, actually, hold on one second. We have Jeffrey Tardigia, and then we'll go to Mr. Hanson.
Jeff Tardigia. Two reminders is one, tomorrow the governor is going to announce the budget. Let's hope that better things, and nobody mentioned that in our reports through there and what perhaps will happen and change. And any bills, from January to February 17th is the timetable to be watching to see what's coming in any way of transportation bills. Heard some other things coming out of San Jose as well. So let's hope that we see new things. And I still hope that we have a advocacy committee form and we have a countdown of 18 months to make another attempt at a transportation tax. Otherwise, like I say, I'm interested in leaving if you guys can't do something better.
Okay, Mr. Hanson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Henry, I just wanted to follow up on Mike Barnbaum's comment about the constitutional amendment to lower the self-help county threshold to 55%. I don't know if we've ever taken a position at our board here on that. Do you have authority to support something like that if that came forward? Or should we take a position as a board on that? Because I do think the legislature is trying to do two things. One, well, I hope they're trying to do two things. I should put it that way. Provide money now to fix roads and transit that have been long starving. But also I think they want to make sure going forward there's a plan to make for self-help. And so...
Yes, actually,
You do have authority.
we do have authority, and also we actually propose that through our state lobbyists we try to propose that to the board what we would like to do later. So we already work on that stuff.
Okay. Well, if it's appropriate, I'd like to encourage the staff to work with the legislature to put that constitutional amendment on the ballot to lower the threshold. So,
Sure, thank you.
Okay, and Barnbaum's there too, so you're good. All right, let's move on. Cindy?
Item number 11, approving an amended and restated policy pertaining to advertising on RT vehicles and facilities. Before you are two resolutions, option resolutions. One is to continue alcohol prohibition, and the second is to permit limited alcohol advertising, presented by Deborah Salinas.
Good evening, Chair Chenier and members of the RT Board. Happy New Year. Tonight, I'm bringing back to the Board for approval an amendment to RT's advertising policy. As you recall, the original proposal presented during the November 14th board meeting included modifying the advertising policy to include alcohol to generate additional revenue. At that time, the board opted to defer the action to allow for further discussion with a select group of RT staff and board members, including Directors Hanson, Harris, and Natoli, who represented yes, no, and neutral opinions during the initial board meeting. And I found out a few of you like beer too. The select group met on November 28th to further discuss several alternative options, which included discussion on allowing beer and wine only, limiting the ad size, staff approving the artwork testing bus and train wraps, and allowing bar and restaurant advertising that featured cocktail glasses but no alcohol branding. During that meeting, I also had a chance to present examples of what transit vehicle alcohol advertising would look like, which I'll show later in this presentation. As a result of that meeting, Archie created a survey for feedback from our riders on what they thought about ads featuring alcohol. We promoted this survey on social media, in email blasts to our riders through our email notification system, and on our website. When asked, are you in favor of permitting alcohol ads on buses, light rail trains, and stations, bus shelters, and it will help increase revenue for RT, 57.83% said yes, and 42.17% said no. However, I did dig a little bit deeper to see if people who selected no out of that 42% would agree with alcohol advertising as a revenue generator if we limited it to small beer and wine ads only on the exterior of RT buses. And 31% of those 42% said yes, they would be in favor. So that kind of, follow me a little bit, that kind of brings the total to 71% if I do my numbers right.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Question. The universe here are riders, right? That have they have a interest, they have a built-in interest in the system acquiring as much revenue as possible, correct?
Correct.
It's not the public. It's
Right.
a very small subset of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Before I get into the option that I'm proposing tonight, I would like to show what other agencies allow alcohol advertising in their policy. And here's a list. These are agencies that have advertising policy with absolutely no restrictions. Next one. And here are some of the agencies that limit alcohol advertising, like I'm suggesting today, to beer and wine only. Now, in all fairness, some of the agencies that do not permit alcohol advertising include Los Angeles, San Diego, Seattle, San Francisco, and Philadelphia. What I'm proposing tonight would limit the size of the advertising as seen in this example. Larger ads such as full wraps, half wraps, and fullbacks would not be permitted. And these are titles that we call for advertising sales, as you can see there. The ad sizes with X's marked on them would not be permitted on buses under the policy amendment as I'm proposing tonight. These types of ads would not be permitted under the revised policy. Would be permitted under the policy I'm proposing tonight. So these are the smaller alcohol advertising ads that I'm proposing. These are ads that would not be permitted. As you can see, the Silver Bullet train and the full Captain Morgan wrap. So this is an example of what ad revenue for alcohol advertising could be. Estimated bus advertising revenue for RT last year was $1.1 million. 15% of bus ad sales could generate $165,000 in revenue for RT if that was our policy. Now, while this may not seem like a lot of money, every dollar counts for RT. We need every dollar in revenue. And it has the opportunity to fill unsold space. After much discussion and looking at the survey results, I'm proposing two options to the board moving forward as you have in front of you. Option one is to permit bar and restaurant advertising on buses and light rail trains and stations and shelters, or absolutely permit on a smaller scale beer and wine advertising on exterior of buses. And option one is absolutely leave the policy as is with the minor revisions that we have proposed. And that concludes my presentation, if you have any questions.
All right, we have some members of the public who wish to speak, so we'll do that and then come back to the board. Barbara Stanton, then Jeffrey Tartagia, Patricia Dougherty, and Maggie Coulter, and Lori Jones. Barbara?
I'm here. Good evening and Happy New Year. So we thought that 313 people responding to a survey was not very many compared to the thousands of riders that use the system until we posted a poll about this on nextdoor.com. And I reached out to 1,700 neighbors in the North Sacramento area. And surprisingly enough, I only got 24 responses. Okay, of the 24 responses, 83% said no, and 17% said yes. And then there was various, talk going on, like, even if it's legal, why does it have to be in our face? And some people wanted just restaurants, and other people said, well, it's okay as long as we don't have fare increases and service cuts for the next 2 or 3 years. Okay, so that was our little survey. So we still think you should not change policy. That's our bottom line. If you do decide to change policy, limit it to restaurants only. But other than that, we do not support this. Thank you.
Hey, Jeffrey.
I will again offer that, like many other decisions, your hindsight's going to be is better public comment, better solicitation of answers is going to give you a better response. There will be unintentional consequences of this if you change them. Is it worth it? And I guess the board is going to have to figure that out for themselves. But I will say, Jay, as you're leaving being the chairperson, there's a lot of things that I will offer the ride. Is today I was riding in and there was somebody with this wet weather that was riding on in basically a prohibited act mode. Unintentional consequences. You have them and are likely to have them with this. And this will be the other question will be marijuana being legalized. Will that be another component? I just offer that as in your thoughts as you make this decision.
Hey, Patricia.
Good evening and Happy New Year. Patricia Doherty. I would like to encourage you also to vote for A, to continue the alcohol prohibition. In short, really, I think of RT as part of promoting health and well-being in our community. And while I too enjoy beer with friends and family, I think that glamorizing and encouraging alcohol consumption is not part of that. I would, however, be in favor of free speech ads, which I think could promote good community conversation. Thank you so much.
Okay. Maggie.
Hi, Maggie Coulter, and yes, Happy New Year to everybody. I'm speaking as an individual and not for Sac-Ride Human, which I normally represent, but as an individual, I have been coming to these meetings for the last 18 months, so I'm certainly aware, as you are, that RT needs money, but this isn't the way to do it. I think that promoting alcohol sales sends a really bad message to the community. I don't think our public agencies should be doing that. And as Patricia Doherty said, you do have the opportunity to make money if you allow public issue advertising. So I'm not sure why RT is prohibiting that, but that's a potential source of revenue that is not promoting drinking, which is, not something RT needs to do. I'm not a teetotaler. I also enjoy craft beer, but I don't think RT is the place for alcohol advertising. Thank you.
Okay, Lori Jones.
Good evening, Chair Chenier and board members. My name is Lori Jones. I go to American River College. I'm not speaking for anyone else other than myself tonight. I have had the classes in Human Services toward a drug and alcohol treatment certificate, and I would urge that this is not a good policy change because it would be better to have ads about the ill effects of alcohol on there. And I don't think that RT wants the results of the ads on RT. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Deborah for her staff work on this. I know that it was an interesting committee meeting since Councilmember Harris, Director Harris isn't here, but Director Natoli is. I think Director Natoli can attest to the fact that we were all over the map in trying to bring together an agreement was not easy. The hardest votes I've had here are the ones where we have to raise our fares, or we have to cut service, or we're trying to choose between one community and another. The agency, during most of my time here on the board, has not had a positive. That is the first time in my 4 years on this board that we've had a positive financial number. And it's minor. We keep taking money out of our reserves. Thankfully, it doesn't look like we're at that point right now. But I have to say, I am very leery of doing anything that takes money off the table. And I understand the public health arguments. I understand the concerns. And I think that, they're legitimate in a lot of ways. But at the same time, by not doing things that are acceptable, that help us raise money, I think that we put more pressure on people who are vulnerable and who can't afford service, because Measure B did not pass. We do not have the additional $3.5 million to $5 million in revenue annually we would have gotten to help expand service, to subsidize riders and do those other things. So I don't think it's a bad thing that we try this. I think if it goes well, people will be happy. If it doesn't go well and we adopt the staff recommendation, this board will be compelled to come back and change it. And that's part of the democracy, we have to try things. Sometimes they work and we obviously want them to work. Sometimes we try things with good intentions and they don't work. If for some reason the revenue doesn't come, that'll be a lesson to us. If for some reason it does, that's great. But I for one, am willing to try it and encourage my fellow directors to try to put another $165,000 in the kitty to take care of our riders. And with that, I will move the staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too would certainly compliment our staff for their work on this, and I think the information presented to the board this evening certainly reflects the additional work that was done by staff. I think was a result of, as Director Hansen said, part of the conversation, I think, a desire by, and I want to credit Director Harris, who isn't here this evening, for his interest in making sure that each of us, as members of this board, who will ultimately make this decision this evening or whenever, that we all have that same information, and I want to thank him for his work on the committee. I would just say that, again, I think weighed against some of the discussion we had the last time around, certainly I think Director Hansen's points about difficult decisions that this board makes relative to whether it's fare increases or service implementation or reductions. Those are very difficult votes, and I commend our staff, obviously, for looking for ways to find better efficiencies, certainly to find revenue sources, and to, whenever curb costs to improve service delivery and maintain service delivery. But I would just say that in the conversations we've had subsequent to our November meeting, that I, as described this evening, could certainly support looking at the restaurants in the kind of the neutral advertising relates to those establishments. And we had that conversation before this board, at least generally the last time around. But I'm still not compelled, I think, based upon what are income projections that take from Denver that doesn't have any prohibition at all, that somehow either an unsold ad space and or converted ad space, that somehow we're going to see this big turnaround. Again, to Director Hansen's point, I guess you don't know unless you test that, but I guess I'm not compelled, certainly on behalf of some of the things we try to do in providing for good public transportation, access to it, obviously lowering the barriers that relates to fares and other things, that buses and or in our shelters and or in advertising, there are some limits here, I think, that certainly restricted to some degree, and we had that conversation. And again, I compliment staff for their correct portrayal of that. But that, again, I just don't think that this rises to the level of when we're going to prohibit tobacco advertising and we're going to prohibit marijuana advertising and e-cigarette advertising. Why then, when you, again, not that those are all the same or the impediments are the same, why then do we go, because we see some revenue potential to chase, do we go to alcohol in opening up the current prohibition on that. So I'm not going to support the motion as it's currently stated. I could support one that would allow us to craft it to allow for, with restaurants and bars in a neutral portrayal, but not with the brand advertising. And again, I appreciate the effort that went into trying to bring it back from hard liquor to beer and wine, but nonetheless, I don't find the arguments compelling, and I didn't in November, but I certainly listened to folks and participated with our committee, and I appreciate the willingness of our chair to try to have the committee frame a recommendation, and Deborah and others worked in trying to help us get to some resolution on this, but I won't support the motion as currently stated. Thanks.
Okay. Director Serta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I like Director Antoli appreciate the fact that we're looking everywhere we can to enhance our revenue streams. It's pretty clear to the directors, to staff, and especially the writing public that we have our fair share of challenges, have had them in the past, and will continue to have them in the future to keep this system not only solvent, but also to expand the services that we all want to see expanded and the routes that we all want to see extended. I do think philosophically even though we sometimes may feel backed into a corner, I think there's still a lot to be said for how do we do this the right way, and how do we do it without inadvertently and adversely affecting the wider community beyond just the ridership. Remember, as was depicted in the slides, you saw the various ways that alcohol, beer and wine could be advertised at the scale of, the sides of buses. Maybe not the whole side, but it's still, for me, in my opinion, it's still pretty considerable that you'd have an 8-foot tall, Coors Light can or bottle that whizzes by you on the street, or perhaps parked at a stoplight. That's not insignificant, and it's about messaging. I mean, this is advertising. It's about delivering a message. That's its intent. And to me, if you look at the ridership of our system, you cross-reference it with who's using our system. There are a substantial number of students that use our system. So I guess I wonder out loud, what message do we send by changing our policy to permit even the advertisement of beer and wine by a means that is somewhat self-selected for a younger audience? To me, that's not good policy. So I will not be supporting the motion. And like my colleague, Mr. Natoli, I could support enhancing our ability to advertise bars and restaurants. I think that's a reasonable thing to consider. And again, I guess I'll end with I guess I too question the order of magnitude that we're talking about in terms of the enhancement of the revenue stream. If this motion passes, I suspect we'll find out. But even if it does materialize, that 15% that was mentioned that occurred in Denver, I still believe, and this just happens to be a principle for me, and I know each of us has their own set of principles to apply in an instance like this. To me, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to advertise that particular commodity when we know that, especially that there are a lot of youth that are going to be riding the system. I'm going to go a step further than Mr. Natoli and offer a substitute motion that we consider augmenting our advertising policy to permit bars and restaurants on our buses and trains.
I'll second that one.
Okay. Ms. Budge.
And I do completely agree with the comments about bars and restaurants. It absolutely supports what's been going on in the region for quite some years now, in terms of developing the farm to fork aspect and the local, encouraging local restaurants and local craft breweries and that kind of thing. However, I do also support Mr. Hansen's original motion, simply because, from my perspective, this is truly not any different from all of the similar advertisements on television at all of the sports events that are shown on television and many other times. I really don't believe that either the wider audience nor the limited audience that is riding the bus are going to find this any different from anything that they see on television. So that's why I support both motions, and I don't know whether we're supposed to vote on the substitute motion first.
You gotta do a substitute. We would be voting on this. Yeah, thanks, Mike. I got this one. We would be voting on the substitute motion first. Mr. Jennings?
Thanks very much. I didn't have the opportunity to be involved in the committee that had this discussion, and I wish
Be on the next one.
I wish that I had. So that means I guess I'm putting my hand up for the next one, as our chair has stated. But I do understand what Member Budge is saying as far as what currently is going on right now, where whether it be television or other advertisements at the Sacramento Kings games or throughout the city, where, you know, this is currently going on right now. I'm probably more in favor of the option that's on the board, is the staff is recommending at this point in time, because I do think that, you know, we've been dealing with alcohol since the Prohibition of 1920, and I think we've come a long way as far as alcohol is concerned, and I think the staff recommendation of limiting it so that it's not completely on the bus, I think is a good recommendation. If I'm to support the motion that's on the table right now, I would say let's take a look at this in 6 months or more to come back and have the discussion to take a look at the complete. So I would just offer that as a substitute motion, not substitute, but friendly amendment that would allow us to take a look at this again in 6 months and see the impact of our decision today, but to still come back and take a look at the full recommendation that's being offered today by the staff.
So, Mr. Cerna, would you take that friendly amendment?
I accept it. But I guess I question the need for it. I mean, unless we think there's going to be a fairly substantial difference in revenue, if that's what Mr. Jennings is alluding to, based on the fact that we'd be now permitting advertising bars and restaurants. Does that make sense?
It is, and
Okay,
and I'm looking at this from the standpoint of what is the impact. Obviously, we weren't satisfied with the public response. I'd like to come back and get more information from the public. I think that's very important to me and to this board, and then also take a look at the actual revenue numbers that come in as a result of that decision. It's very hard for me, after sitting on this board for the 2 years that I've sat on, to walk away from any revenues that would impact RT based on what I know exists. I think all of us know exists. So that would be the reason for my friendly amendment.
Yep, that's fine.
Can I just add one thing? 6 months probably wouldn't be enough time for us to gear up on that. So would you be open to, if you're going to go that direction, a little longer? A year or two?
Yeah, why don't we do this? Why don't we leave it at staff's discretion?
Okay.
When you think we have enough data to come back, have a discussion. I also just want to note, and I don't know how it would impact the outcome. We are missing 4 board members tonight,
Right.
and this is an issue that I'd like people to have input on. I don't want to delay this, so I'm happy to move forward with the substitute motion with a friendly amendment saying we'll come back and look at this at the appropriate time, see if just doing the restaurants and bars gets us anywhere.
Sure.
And looking at our overall financial position. So,
And I'm sorry, I have one more question before we get to the vote.
Okay, we're not there yet.
Okay.
Quite yet, but Mr. Natoli, do you accept the friend? Oh, you seconded it, Linda.
I think Linda said.
Anybody?
Yeah. So do you accept the friendly amendment as a second also?
Yes, although, but I think we need to restate the whole thing.
We will. We'll get there, Deborah.
So the question when it comes to bars and restaurants advertising, I just want to be clear. You're allowing us to feature cocktail glasses, but not a brand. I want to make sure that that's what you're saying.
Mr. Cerna?
That's fine. I think there's going to have to be some discretion that's applied at the administrative level as to, you know, what constitutes a reasonable image and verbiage to adequately advertise what a bar and restaurant wants advertised, but at the same time, not be an end around, so they can simply say, welcome to Paragary's and just offer a gin bottle. I don't think that's going to be appropriate.
No, but sort of, not to nitpick, but if American River Brewery,
I was
which
just going to mention
believe,
that.
advertises at Golden One Center, were to want to take out an ad, then we would be advertising their
Brand
craft beer, but
and
we would
bar.
also, there could logically be a
Yeah,
beer bottle in
yeah,
that ad.
I get that. I get that.
And the same thing would happen with Ruth's Dollar or any brewery that has an actual bar or restaurant.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're only doing ads for breweries then. So. All right, so we have a motion with a second. We have a substitute with a second with a friendly amendment. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you. Despite that I made the original motion, I'm going to support this, but I just want to say why. There's two reasons. One, I think that it's not healthy for us to continue these conversations over and over again. Actually, three reasons. The second one is I do think if the other board members were here, we may have a fuller conversation. And I wish they were here to be able to vote, because the way our voting system works, it does change the dynamics of that. And then if the vote happened, it would be a 49-51 vote based on what I heard, and my motion would fail by one vote. And so I'll concede that let's take an inch of progress if that will help the agency. So I'm going to support the motion.
I think it would actually be a 49-46 vote on this.
I get
something like that.
Yeah, so we,
Huh?
because it's not 50% of those present by the weighting. It's 50% of 100, correct? Plus
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Close.
Deborah, you're good with what we're doing?
Yes.
Okay. You've got some discretion in there, and then at the appropriate time, you'll bring it back
Yes.
to this board for further discussion. All those in favor signify by aye on the substitute motion.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, substitute motion carries. That's the way we're going to go. Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate all the work, and
Thank
it's a conversation that we're going to have to continue because we will be showing this in February, but Mr. Lee and staff have looked at our needs over the next 30 years, and while 150,000 a year isn't going to solve the problem, it's a piece of the puzzle. So
Well,
we're gonna
thank
have
you
to
very
work.
much.
So thank you for your work. All right, item 12.
Item number 12, whether or not to make changes to RT Small and Local Business Preference Program Policy, presented by Fernando Barcena.
Thank you,
And I
Cindy.
want to ask the public if I might to turn in all your cards now. No
I
cards.
think we have everyone's card.
No, we don't. We keep getting them.
Okay, but we're starting the item, so I think we're done. Go ahead.
Good evening, Board. Fernando Barcena, Manager of Contracts and DBE with RT. Tonight's item is an action item requesting that the Board determine whether or not to adopt changes to RT Small and Local Business Preference Program Policy in regards to the definition of a local business in the policy. The policy definition states that a local business is a business that is located within the program's defined region. There's been good comments and questions and feedback and input from the community, which has addressed this definition and requesting that the Board consider changing the definition to include a change in the definition to require that the definition include that the businesses located within the region actually be principal place of business in the region. And so the item presented tonight for the Board to decide is been brought to the Board in essence in the last board meeting as an information item, and it provides three alternatives for the Board to consider on policy change. Actually, the first is to not change the policy and leave the definition as it currently is set out in the policy. The second option would be to change the local business definition to allow preference points be given only to firms headquartered in the region, in this case, a principal place of business. And the third option is to modify the policy to provide different levels of point preferences to businesses that are headquartered in the region versus just located in the region.
And an example given is to provide a 10% preference point to businesses headquartered in the region and 5% preference points to businesses just located in the region. And to provide some consideration to the board or some things to consider in regards to changing the definition in option 3, where there would be a tiered approach to points provided for the status of the firm, whether located or principal place to business. One of the things that's discussed in the issue paper is that this might potentially actually water down the aggressiveness of the preference program, in that if you have firms competing for a procurement, for a contract, and one or the other is located, the other is principal, then it in effect changes the preference for a firm to just a 5% preference. So that's something to consider there. The other thing to consider in regards to the change in proposed as option number 2, to change the local business definition to allow preference points to be given only to firms headquartered in the region. Something that the board consider here is that actually fits in with the overall program attempts to make it an aggressive program that accrues benefits to small businesses and local businesses. So I haven't done research on it, but I think it's intuitive to consider that small businesses are going to be, their principal place of business is going to be here locally. So if the local business definition is changed to only provide preference points for local businesses that are principal place of business in Sacramento, then that would actually be, it would serve that intent of the program to make it an aggressive program, so that small businesses would be most likely be the firms that would get the additional 10% point preferences as local businesses. So things to consider. With that, I'll open it up to questions and also make it available for comments.
Great. We have a number of folks from the public who wish to speak, so we'll do that first and then come back to board comments. Barbara Stanton, Russell Rawlings.
Can you put me towards the back?
Okay. Russell Rawlings. After Russell is Maggie Coulter.
Great. Happy New Year, Board. My name is Russell Rawlings. I live in Oak Park, and I have watched this issue for quite some time, and I think we're now at a point where it's very obvious that there is immense public support for a modification here. We've got a tremendous opportunity, and I really appreciate all the work that you've done on this, the discussions that have been had. But I think that having a strong local business preference is going to show that regional transit cares about the community. And I think that that's going to be key in obtaining additional ridership. Regional transit right now is kind of just seen as just scurrying for any help that they can possibly find. But I think as you look to build a stable base, a stable, you want that public support. And this is an opportunity to obtain that. It's an opportunity to say that the local economy matters first and give many of these competitors an edge, to show that the Sacramento region is important. So I encourage this, the board to choose option 2 that aggressively gives an edge to locally headquartered and principal business area firms. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Russell. Maggie? And then Fran Eldridge.
Good evening again. Thanks, Fernando, for your work on the staff report and the presentation. So I want to talk a little bit about what is the purpose of the Small and Local Business Preference Program. if it is to try to get companies to open offices in Sacramento, multinational, national companies, that's not a realistic goal. This program will not do that. Multinational and national corporations are big companies. Those that bid on RT contracts either already have a branch office or they do not. They are not moving here to get RT's contract. Let's be realistic. The program is too small and it's not going to influence these corporations. So what you have is companies that are already here, made the decision to move here, national and multinational corporations. That's who this program is going to get if you continue that preference. On the other hand, if the purpose of this program is to help small and truly local business, meaning those whose principal place of business is in Sacramento, that is a realistic goal. But that will not happen if RT throws away these local preference points on multinational and national corporations. Big multinational corporations already have advantages, and the reason to have a local business program is to help level the playing field so that local businesses can better compete. And why do we want local businesses? You heard Russell speak to that somewhat. Local businesses keep money in the community. Their profits don't go to overseas owners. Their success stimulates economic growth and encourages the development of more small and local businesses. That's good for our community. Local businesses are also of our community, so we know what they're up to. They aren't involved in international violations of human rights, labor rights, or global environmental degradation. They are our local companies. They started here. They're based here. G4S is just one example of a huge multinational corporation that is not local. It's just one of many. Walmart's another one. Their having an office in Sacramento has nothing to do with SacRT, and they, like other multinational corporations, do not need or deserve extra local business points. Local companies headquartered here deserve those points, so I urge you to vote for option 2.
Thank you. Fran? After Fran is Paul Leuenberger.
Good evening, directors. I'm Fran Eldridge, and I too support option 2. Principal place of business, for the excellent reasons that our 2 previous speakers talked about, means local, for all that wonderful stuff that it means, that people really care about Sacramento. They have their principal place of business here because they want Sacramento to do well. And they believe that by being here, they can help Sacramento do well. Option 1 that sticks in branch office or principal place of business really negates the principal place of business. So I am totally in support and urge you to vote for option 2, maintaining its principal place of business as the only criteria. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul? After Paul, I believe it's Ron Lee, if that's correct.
I don't have a big speech here. I'm just as a personal opinion from a native of Sacramento. I've been here over 70 years. And I would like to back what Maggie and the other folks have said. I'd urge you to hire local people that are headquartered here or do at least the principal amount of their business here for public accountability, for the economy. Let's do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Lee? Nope. Lori Jones?
Oh, you, Raymond.
Raymond Lee? I don't know. I can't read it.
Let's just Ray, maybe?
Ray? I don't know.
Yeah, I would think so.
All I see is an R in something.
That's good.
Okay.
It's Ray. Just call me Ray, that's all. No problem. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Raymond Lee, and Sacramento is my hometown. I remember Sears when it first opened, and Edmonds Field when it closed. I live in Midtown, and I do ride the RT. I'm here tonight because of my concern that multinational and national corporations are receiving extra points simply because they have a branch office in our city. As you well know, these big corporations already have an advantage because of their size and the power that comes with it. There's a reason for keeping business local. Big corporations are not invested or interested in a community, only the money they can extract from it. They radically, and for the worse, change the landscape and the livability of a community to its detriment. Instead, extra points should go to local businesses. They need to be owned by people in the region. They need to be headquartered here. and have the principal location in Sacramento, in the Sacramento region. Additionally, security officers should be part of RT. Failing this, RT should hire one of our many local security firms, not outsiders. Local business needs to be given first priority. The money needs to stay here. Finally, I'm concerned about that my tax dollars are going to a corporation infamous for its disregard of fair labor practices, human rights, law and regulations that ensure and promote the safety and well-being of our community. My tax dollars should not be going to such an entity. My tax dollars need to stay local. I hope you take that into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lori Jones, then Estevan Hernandez.
Good evening again. My name is Lori Jones. I concur with all the statements before that have encouraged option 2, because without that, the choice of a local is pretty meaningless. I mean, you want the revenue to stay in Sacramento, and I would think it would be easier to communicate with a group that's here rather than one that has to, oh, well, let me talk to corporate, which is in Beijing or wherever. And so I urge you to vote for option 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Estevan?
Hello. My name is Estevan Hernandez. I'm a member of the advisory board of the Soul Collective, Sac State alumni. Been here for quite a while. I write RT. I write RT, and I wanted to come out because I do feel this is important to speak on. I think that it's a pretty straightforward issue. I mean, I can't see how you could argue against what we've been talking about. I'm in favor of what the speakers have already said for option 2. I think it's straightforward. I think that in capitalism, when you have companies that are multinational, what they're going to end up do is extract our money from the community and use it for their own profit. You know, there's a Burger King on Stockton and near Florin that I've gone to, and they have a local-owned security crew that manages the property. It's very small. It's like, I think they said like 5-people team. And but you know, they could do it at Burger King, and I think it would be, like Russell was saying, very symbolic to the community if RT took that step and said that, you know, we do care about the community. We, you know, want to make this more clear and make it actually benefit small businesses. It says it's benefits small businesses, so I think it would be important to take that step. If it did go to small business security firms, which do exist in the region, it would they would be able to grow, they could hire more, and that money that they get in their profit, they would use here because they live here. They would go, you know, to the new arena or, you know, go to the grocery stores here. So it all that money would go from the taxpayers back to the taxpayers, as opposed to, you know, from the taxpayers to a multinational corporation to another country, another country's markets. Thank you.
Barbara, you ready? Yeah. All right.
Real quick. Only to say that we concur. We like option 2. We hope you vote for option 2. And eventually, I'd like to see security services in-house. RT have their own security services. But in the meantime, we urge you to vote for option 2. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That's it. Members of the board?
I'll just jump in quickly since I said very little the last item. At first I was reluctant to really change and modify much of this. I think it's important to remember the support for option 2 really just builds in some clarification, and it does not preclude giant multinational companies from competing, which is important. I think we do want that, but I'm also supportive of clarifying this definition so that there is some help for a smaller local business. So I'm in support of option 2, and I'll make that motion.
All right.
Second.
All right, Mr. Cerna.
Question. If I'm not mistaken, isn't the recommended action no specific course of action, or am I looking at the wrong issue paper?
That's true.
I'm sorry?
I guess just there's no...
It says there's no recommended course of action.
That's correct. It's we're giving it to the board to make a determination, but there has been offered in the issue paper 2 resolutions only to if the board chose not to change the policy, there would be no resolution required. The two resolutions that have been provided is one to change the definition to principal place of business,
Right.
and the other to combine it.
No, I get the substance of it. It's a process. I'm looking at Tim. Is there any problem with us voting on going with an option when it's not recommended in the staff?
No, actually,
Okay.
that was my verbiage under the recommendation because we really didn't have.
Okay.
We were just offering it up to the board. It's the board's policy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Ms. Budge?
So then could we clarify what option 2 really does?
Would you like to do that, please?
Okay. So what option 2 would do is actually not only change the definition of local business in the policy to require that in order for the firm to be eligible to receive the preference points is that their principal place of business be in the region defined by the policy. And by principal place of business, that's a legal term that basically it's similar to the definition of headquarters, but not quite. But it's essentially the same idea that it's a nerve center of the business. So that business might have other branches, but their principal place of business would be required to be in Sacramento. And then the additional change that's actually been made in the policy is to make it consistent with some of the other programs from other transit districts and other agencies that I looked at, is to specify a time frame. And in this case, I chose what some agencies use as the principal place of business, that they need to be in the location, or excuse me, in the region for the 6 months prior to the bid due date and time.
Okay.
So that's an addition.
So I could support giving some preference points to local business, but I do not support the change in definition.
Okay. And that wouldn't change the policy, because the policy does include preferences under the current definition, under the current policy.
Okay. Other comments? So I have a motion by Mr. Moore and a second by Mr. Natoli. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. Abstain? Okay, the motion carries with Ms. Budge voting against and all others voting for. All right, thanks very much. Mr. Spangler, Mr. Salinas, thank you so much for all your work on this. We'll see how it goes. All right, we're going to move to item 13, and I'd actually like to take up item 13B first and then move back to 13A.
Certainly.
If you want to announce that.
Item 13B, motion temporarily suspending Section 3.1.2.5 of Regional Transit's Administrative Code, Title III, elections for the election of vice chair.
So the reason we wanted to do this was primarily because we have an empty seat from the county right now. We wanted to wait till that gets filled. You know, traditionally, the vice chair has moved up to the chair, but in selecting a new vice chair, and because we also have 3 other board members not here tonight, I think it makes sense. So I'd look for a motion on 13B. Motion by Mr. Hanson, second by Mr. Jennings. All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the motion carries on 13B. Let's go back to 13A.
13A, motion nominating and electing a chair of the RT Board of Directors effective tomorrow.
Okay, so I'm going to get to that in a second. We have Mr. Tardiglia wishes to speak on this item, on these items. Number 6. Oh, there's no.
Jeff Tardigia. Essentially, my comment was this: please plan better, because with this month of the changeover, a lot of things went wrong. And I'm saying to you is this: make sure next year, not when you got used to after 2 years. And lastly, this will give me the opportunity to support you guys and read the MAC reports as well as the Connect card, because there's a lot of things there you still apparently don't know.
Okay, thank you. So we have, this has been a busy year and a busy 2 years. We've had a lot of extra work, a lot of ad hoc committees, and Mr. Morin's done a great job working with me on doing this, and so I'm very happy and honored to be able to nominate him to be chair for the next year. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Anybody else? Third. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? You're it.
He dressed up.
Congratulations. You want to say something?
Well, thanks, and I'll just ask our immediate past chair, Jay, to continue his world record service as chair and just finish up the meeting for us here.
Okay. I think I can do it. Well, you don't take effect till tomorrow anyway.
Okay,
so.
good.
All right, let's go to item, so congratulations, and we know you do a great job.
Item number 14, information, amending the fare structure to modify age requirements for student discount fare, presented by Brent Berniker.
Okay, so this is just an information item, but what we want to, it's actually a really simple topic. The issue paper just discusses our existing fare structure as it relates to students that are going to K-12 school pursuing their diploma. The discount program that we currently have in place was always to give them a discount as long as they're seeking their high school diploma. The current program limits that discount to someone under the age of 19. The proposed amendment would remove that age requirement, but still keep in the same language as far as requiring them to be pursuing their traditional high school diploma. We don't estimate a significant impact in a fiscal impact. It's actually a small fiscal impact. We see that probably less than 1,000 students would be impacted. It would actually give them a higher discount, but it wouldn't cost a lot for RT. So we recommend pushing this forward and bringing it back in 30 days for a change to our actual fare policy.
Great, and I'll just tell you, I brought this forward. This came to me from the principal and some teachers at American Legion High School who have a lot of kids who are of that age and don't have a way to get to school because they can't afford the fares. This is I think it was $33,000 that you're estimating. It's like 7% of the 1,000 kids that would actually take advantage of it. I just think it's the right thing to do. So with that, I'd love to offer direction that we put on the consent calendar for our next meeting, if you guys are good with that.
Great.
All right, so we are, thank you, Brent, appreciate that, and thanks, Henry, for taking care of that. We have no other people from the public to speak on any items. We have a closed session tonight, so I'm going to ask all of the board to, minus Mr. Morton, I know, who has to go to work because of the flooding that's going on. So if everybody else can meet upstairs, we have a couple issues, and will we need to report out on
No
that?
report out.
Okay, so you all get to go home. We have to go.
But I need to read the items before you. Conference with legal counsel. Number 1, Janice O'Rourke versus RT and Carmen Carter. And number 2, N. Jones et al. Versus RT. That's it.
Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. We're not adjourned. How's that?
Yes.